Hey! So today I'll be talking about Kazuha and why despite him being an Anemo unit, he's actually the best unit for pretty much any Dendro team. But before I start discussing this, there's something I want to say first. You enjoying these videos are enough for me, so feel free to subscribe and thank you so much for your support. I hope to reach 1,000 subs by the end of the year. So, Dendro's been out for a year now, and when it was released, it was somehow managed to bring a new way of dealing damage through alternative playstyles, while also perfectly balancing out how it interacted with the other elements. It was the missing piece of the puzzle that honestly fit pretty well, and with it came a plethora of different and quite complicated reactions. To sum it up pretty quickly, burning was a simple reaction that not only existed since the beginning of the game, but also behaved like an accelerated status effect, like corrosion from rift towns whenever Pyro and Dendro were applied after one another. Quicken was an aura applied to opponents whenever an instance of Dendro and Electro united, allowing for the branching of two Quicken reactions, Spread and Aggravate, which increased consequent instances of Dendro and Electro damage to be buffed by the character's EM respectively. And Bloom was a reaction that occurred whenever Hydro and Dendro connected, creating entities known as Dendro cores. The way these Dendro cores would behave would vary depending on how they would interact. First off, only 5 of these Dendro cores can exist at any one time on the field. For the moment the 6th Dendro core was created, the first one would explode, dealing AoE Dendro damage scaling off of the EM of the character who created the core. As for the two branching Bloom reactions, Hyper Bloom and Virgin would essentially behave the same, but with a twist. Hyper Bloom occurred whenever Electro is applied to Dendro cores, causing them to shoot up and target enemies, not unlike a Tracer missile, and it would deal AoE Dendro damage based on the character's EM, and a small AoE. As for Virgin, Dendro cores will explode upon coming in contact with Pyro, and they would also deal AoE Dendro damage based on the character's EM as well. Both of these branching Bloom reactions offer faster damage instances when throwing in another element. Now, as we all know, Dendro doesn't and can't interact with Anemo, being that they do not have a corresponding reaction. However, when it comes to what they can both scale off of, they do share that in common, being EM. And that's where they can interact kind of indirectly. Anemo has always been known as a support element. Regardless of that, there are certain Anemo units, such as main DPSs like Xiao, Wander, and Hazo. It does mainly focus on grouping enemies up, dispersing elements properly, and causing swirl reactions. A huge part of how that works is by infusing their elemental bursts with elemental absorptions. Examples like Sucrose, Kazuha, Venti, Traveler, and newly, Lynette, all have an absorption mechanic tied to their bursts. It also allows their burst to deal additional damage to that element while also giving different individualized effects based on each character's kit. Sucrose can augment the EM of her teammates, Kazuha can give elemental damage bonus based off of his own EM, Venti can refund energy to party members of the corresponding element, Traveler can shred resistances, and Lynette can offer increased damage and auto-targeting. However, only one of these characters serves this purpose of infusion the best, and that's Kazuha. His burst infuses almost instantaneously upon coming in contact with an element, and while also creating a sizable AoE field of whatever element that was absorbed. This sort of effect can't be achieved with other units. Sucrose's burst can't infuse upon impact, and can absorb the wrong element really easily. Venti's burst is set at a distance, and not all enemies can be dragged close to it to have that element applied. And both Lynette and Traveler have really bad grouping in general. Kazuha's burst can absorb whatever element he needs to help trigger Dendro reactions. However, this is not just how his kit works, it also pertains to how you build him. Typically, unless you're playing some sort of cracked out DPS Kazuha, most players build him off of EM. This is because of his A4 passive that allows him to give elemental damage bonus to all party members for whatever element or elements he swirled based on 0.04% of his total EM. This makes him extremely broken in how he can buff his teammates' damage, but also makes him unprecedentedly insane for Dendro too. Now before I put this all together, I have to discuss something as well, and this is his absorption priority. The order of priority he has is Pyro, Hydro, Electro, then Cryo, from highest priority to lowest priority. So if he's in a burning team, his general Pyro application from his burst would help so much with damage, especially since it scales off of EM and character levels solely. And while Spread can't make much of use of it since it's direct Dendro damage, Aggravate can still pack a punch with additional electro damage bonus. However, the main part of what makes Dendro so special are Bloom-related reactions, and that's where Kazuha shines. As for Virgin, his burst damage intervals are in the perfect middle ground when they are slow enough to allow for Dendro cores to form on the field first, and fast enough so that they can trigger consistently. And since Virgin damage is based on EM and character level as well, then the damage will be based on Kazuha's stats. Hyper Bloom would also perform similarly to Virgin as well. A Hydro infusion would also just help creating more Dendro cores so that they can explode quicker. And honestly, that's why he's so broken with Dendro. His EM scaling has another use aside from how it's intended to work with his kit, and it works insanely well. Even if his burst infuses the wrong element in bloom-related teams, those cores would still deal high damage due to Kazuha's high EM stat, essentially trivializing the infusion issue. No matter what element Kazuha could absorb, there would be pretty much no downside impacting the team. If an enemy made him refuse Cryo in a Hyper Bloom team, then Kazuha can adapt the team to help deal burst damage for a moment before changing back to Hyper Bloom. And if he somehow absorbs Cryo instead of Hydro, then he can turn the Bloom-based team into a Fridge team, keeping enemies together and frozen, allowing Blooms to deal massive damage. And if he absorbed Hydro for a Hyper Bloom or Burgeon team, then he can just make more Blooms for subsequent reactions to transpire. We all knew that Kazuha was goated to begin with, but honestly, he just became even better. His utility and consistency also helped bolster Dendro's broken Bloom teams and made it really fun to play. Ultimately, I will say that the only team that this doesn't work in is a Milo Bountiful Bloom team, where you only want to have Hydro and Dendro characters in the party to trigger her passive. But to be fair, that team is broken enough already, so I can completely understand why it doesn't work that way. So yeah, you already know what button to press if you want to see more on a regular basis, and if you have something to say, I can only hope that it's nice. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you, bye!